This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
I appreciate that, Alex. Thank you for recognizing.
This is how legacies are built.
Halliburton takes it in the backcourt. Crosses over on Beverly. Float game for the win! Tyrese! The terror! Halliburton double team. Shot clock at 4. Nembhard's got to put it up. Step back. His three-pointer. Nembhard knocks the three down. Timeout, Knicks!
Andrew Nembhard was so good.
17,000 on their feet. Siakam, a three. Siakam hits the three. 6 1/10. Pacers have the lead.
And that right there is why the Indiana Pacers traded for Pascal Siakam.
Neesmith with a running start. Just destroy it. Aaron Neesmith. 10 seconds. McConnell, baseline drive. Gives it up. Top in. Corner three. And rattles in. Indiana pulls off a shocker.
The pep in the step is back.
Johnson cut off against Murphy with 6 to shoot.
And blocked by Turner.
Chicken! Please give me some smothered chicken on that one.
You think Tyrese Halliburton is overrated? Think again.
Pacers down 3. Halliburton's got the ball. Halliburton rises up. A three and is fouled.
You have got to be kidding me. Right in the grill of Giannis.
And that's a miss by Kuzma at the rim. Turner flushes it down the lane. Myles Turner with authority. Oh my God.
The crowd's screaming, oh my God.
8 seconds. Halliburton against Giannis. Halliburton, 3 seconds. Puts it in. He put it in. 3/10.
There's no timeout.
No timeouts for the Bucks.
Yeah! That's how we do.
All right, everybody, joining us now on Setting the Pace is a great friend of the show, a guy that's come on here several times to talk hoops with us, and we always enjoy his content. It is Bryce Simon from, where do we want to promote you from? I know there's a lot of things we can promote for you.
So Motor City Hoops is my I don't know, what do you want to call it? That's what I am on Twitter and Blue Sky and social media stuff. And then the Pistons Pulse podcast is the actual Pistons podcast, and of course Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini.
All right, so you've been covering this finals with Sam a lot on the Game Theory podcast. You guys did your post-game show, so I'm going to bring you over here to talk to us about it a little bit, just in case people didn't tune into that, or maybe throw some different ideas out at you. But this was a game that was very fun to watch. I think the last 2 games have been absolutely incredible. Aside from the fouling, that was a little bit ridiculous. The amount of stoppages we saw in the game in Game 4, exhausting to watch. But overall, I mean, we saw both teams play their style of basketball, and OKC ended up playing their style of basketball the best in that fourth quarter. Their defense was elite, and Indiana really struggled to get any offense generated there, specifically in that fourth quarter, it felt like. And I think that we can start there. While I do want to look at Indiana's point of views and things like that, what did you see OKC doing so well defensively to keep Indiana from getting into their offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we talked about last night was OKC finally was able to get physical with Indiana a little bit and make some plays that way. We talked about how the Pacers were the more physical team. I mean, and I know Pacers fans don't want to hear this. I thought the Pacers were the better team. I told you before we recorded here, I was ready for my 3-1 takes. I mean, I already have to carry the receipt of calling Thunder in 5, right? Like that obviously was way off. And so I was like, okay, I was starting to analyze what did we miss? What did I not see about this Pacers team? I think the other thing was I didn't think Oklahoma City guarded the Indiana ball screen stuff well all game long. Like I don't think Indiana's transition and pace is what was hurting them. I think it was just that they either weren't navigating screens well or they were getting confused or whatever. And especially late in clutch time, Oklahoma City said, we're just going to switch everything. Even with Chet on the bum ankle or shin or whatever it was, they're just going to switch. And I mean, I'm sure people can pause it in certain spots and look at it and be like, well, Indiana just missed the shots. I don't know. I mean, Chet forced 2 tough pull-up jumpers. And again, maybe those are things like, hey, Halliburton's going to make this, Nembhard's going to make this, and then forced Halliburton to give it up. So maybe Indiana just missed shots, right? Like sometimes that is part of the game of basketball, but there was also some disruption. Dort had a big disruption play. Chet had a big time rotation contest. So I think Oklahoma City was finally able to kind of assert their will on the defensive end for the first time, like at a high level since maybe the first half of game one.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a great point. I thought Dort was very physical there in that second half and really just kind of made Halliburton feel that physicality. And then, of course, maybe a little bit of your doppelganger, Alex Caruso.
Yeah.
He was out there and doing some stuff, right? I mean, I posted a video of the foul that he clearly committed against Halliburton in the first quarter that did not get called. But for the most part, like he's a good defender. He's very physical. And I think one of the things that I think is frustrating for a lot of Pacer fans is the level of physicality that they allow in certain instances. Like, oh, okay, we're going to let Lou Dort push Halliburton down at the free throw line, or we're going to let Lou Dort push Halliburton out of bounds to get the ball, but then Nembhard or Neesmith barely touch SGA, and all of a sudden they call a tic-tac foul. And I don't think anybody would care if they called that on both sides, but it's just like it felt like for the majority of these playoffs, we've seen a very physical game be allowed to play, be allowed to be played. I don't feel like that was the case in this game last night. I felt like the stoppages really just kind of disrupted the flow to a certain degree.
Yeah, I don't usually get into officiating stuff too much. I also I watch the game from behind, and so I can fast forward through a lot of things like the free throws and all of the reviews and whatever. And so it doesn't weigh on me as much as a fan who's watching live, because I'm not watching as a fan, right? Like I'm just watching to watch the content and take mine. I have 4 full pages of notes. Like that's what I'm watching to do so I can talk about it. I will say, I literally have it in my notes. I did think OKC was getting a good whistle, especially in the first half. And I feel like they have taken away a lot of the SGA foul calls that he normally gets. And I know right now what's going around is like, okay, now you're not giving him the foul calls, but you need to start calling offensive fouls on him. And sometimes I struggle with those things a little bit because I'm like, okay, I will give Andrew Nembhard so much credit for how he's defended. But if we want every push off from SGA, do we want every grab from Nembhard off the ball and stuff like that may be happening as well? And I understand why people are frustrated, and I do think it turned into the Scott Foster show, and we all know that that's going to happen whenever it's him. And I do think that OKC got a good whistle for a large portion of this game. But in general, I just kind of like you said, I hated all of the stoppages. I hated that all of a sudden we went to the flagrant foul stuff. Like, that's not a flagrant on OB. That was a ridiculous call in my opinion. And so it's like, I hope we didn't open up a can of worms where now this is what we get for 3 more games, is flagrant fouls, reviews, 30 plus free throws for both teams. That's my ultimate hope, is that's not what this turns into.
Yeah, and I'll just double down. I probably should know the names of officials as well as I do, but Josh Tiven, to me, every game I've watched him, it's like him and Scott Foster play off of each other with who's going to call more fouls. And
yeah.
It's like, like the 2 Mathurin foul calls there where they're calling like holding fouls before the ball is inbounded. Sure. It's like, this is the finals. There's going to be holding on every single inbound play. It's like OKC was making it very difficult for Indiana to get the basketball in as well. So it's like, to me, just let them play. It's a 4-point game. Don't dictate the outcome of the game because you want to call a stupid grab foul when there's grabbing on all this stuff. And that's, to me, what is probably more frustrating than anything is just the consistency. I don't care if Indiana gets called for fouls. I know they're fouling. I'm not stupid. I see the fouls they commit. It's dumb. But you even said it. The flagrant foul on Obi Toppin, to me, that almost felt like if Hartenstein wouldn't have reacted the way that he did and got in Obi's face, maybe they don't call it that. Or maybe they felt like they maybe should have called the one on Neesmith the previous game and it was a makeup call. It's just, you can't look at it that way, I know, but it's just how it felt in the moment. So if you want to respond to that, you can, but if not, I can move on.
No, real quick. The only thing I said was like, Nembhard came out in game 3 and forced the offensive foul on SGA. I'm pretty sure SGA popped him in the face with like an elbow or a shoulder. And listen, I didn't want it to get reviewed, right? Like I want to make it clear. I'm not saying I wanted to get reviewed, but it's like, okay, well, if we set the precedent of reviewing the Obi play, now we're setting a precedent I don't like for the rest of the fight. I don't understand why all of a sudden in game 4, this is what started happening. You know what I mean? And I want to give the officials a little bit of grace because I agree with what we're saying. I think in reality, it is difficult to find that fine line, right? Consistency isn't difficult, but it's like, where exactly is the line of this reach is okay, or excuse me, this grab is okay, this grab isn't, and like the fine line is how much is it dictating what's happening? Because we always like to use the blanket statement of let the players make the plays, right? Let the players determine. But then we're also posting, well, don't let SGA push off of Neesmith or Nimhard or whatever, right? Like, well, you can't say let the players determine the game and then also be mad that they didn't called a push off on SGA. So I do want to give the officials grace in terms of there is a fine line of where do we draw that and then staying consistent with that line. And to your point, it didn't necessarily feel consistent last night, which is always the frustrating part.
Yeah, and then that I totally agree with. I mean, and even the push-off stuff from SGA, like, I didn't really feel like that was that necessary. Like, don't call that, that's fine, but don't call it on the other end either. Or, the screens,
correct.
They haven't called one moving screen on OKC's big man, and they're like, I mean, Caruso's just like hopping down the court like this. I'm just like,
I don't know how they ever call off a moving screen. Like, how do you? I would love for an official to explain to me when they decide to call, because I've always said this. I think one of the biggest, if people want the defense to get back some advantages, I think one of the biggest things is to start calling illegal screens. I don't know. I don't want to like insult anyone. Really think about how hard it is to navigate a ball screen in the NBA, Alex. Not only are these guys 250, 260 pounds, Matt, they're moving at the same time in all of these. Like, if you want to give the defense back something, start calling illegal screens.
Yeah.
And I think players will adjust quickly because it's a personal foul, it's a team foul, and it's a turnover. So I know this isn't what this podcast episode is supposed to be about, but
it's fine. I think it's good.
That is always my tangent. You want to give the defense something back. You want to make it tougher on the offense. Start calling illegal screens consistently, but they don't. And I have no idea when they decide to call them and when I don't understand what the criteria is.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they've adjusted a lot from last year, because last year I felt like they called a lot more. I remember Myles Turner got called for a lot more moving screens last year. I feel like the only person that ever gets called for moving screens that I've seen in the playoffs so far is Karl-Anthony Towns, and that's because he sticks his elbow way out when he's doing them. So he's just pretty blatant about it. But yeah, so anyway, getting back to the actual game part of it, besides the fouling, I mean, that's just a hot topic on social media right now, so it feels like it's important to talk about. But the Pacers held Oklahoma City to just 3 made 3-point shots.
Yeah.
And they lose this game. And they just go completely stagnant in that fourth quarter. And Pascal Siakam only gets 1 field goal attempt out of everybody. To me, it just kind of felt like Indiana let this one go. It was kind of like they had a hold of the rope and they just let it go through their hands. And now this is kind of a bigger, broader question, but did you feel like the winner of Game 4 was going to win the series before the game started? And now that it's happened, do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, I told you if we would have come on here and the Pacers were up 3-1, we would be discussing, or I would be encouraging us to discuss, are they going to win it in 5 or 6, right? Like, I think that's a mentality game in terms of, and I think Indiana could have had this mentality. We're going to go close this out in OKC. We're not going to like, oh, let's win it back at home. No, we have the mentality of let's go win it on their home court. Obviously that didn't happen. And now, I mean, so coming out, if Indiana would have won, I probably would have picked the Pacers in 6 with a real, like, maybe they just close them out in 5. Now the OKC ones, I'm OKC in 7. And again, I've been completely wrong with this series from the top. I came on your podcast and said Thunder in 5. Trying not to be disrespectful, as much of that is disrespect to the Pacers, saying it would be a competitive, fun series, all of that. But yeah, I guess I do believe that if that's where my mentality would have been in the other universe where Indiana closes out that game, then I guess I do feel a little bit like the winner of Game 4 is going to be the team that ends up winning the series.
Yeah, and I said that before the podcast. I was like, I feel like Game 4 is a must-win for Indiana if they want to win this series. And then after the game happened, I said, I think Indiana has figured out how to beat OKC, where I think in the first 2 games, the first 2 games of a series are really a feel-it-out portion of the series. So if you're able to split those, especially if you're the road team, like that feels really good. It felt like, okay, I think Ramona Shelburne put this out on her Twitter. It kind of felt like Indiana probably shouldn't have won Game 1.
Sure.
And then OKC probably shouldn't have won Game 4. So it's just the way, like, the ups and downs, ebbs and flows of a playoff series. But I would not be surprised if Indiana won another road game in Oklahoma City. And that to me is like what I like about this series so much. It's like I feel like these two teams kind of have each other figured out to a certain degree. and they're still able to push the right points to do what they want to do well. I thought the biggest adjustment last night was down in that fourth quarter when they just started hunting Aaron Nesmith.
Yeah.
They realized Andrew Nembhard was not going to be able to, or SGA did not have the same ability to score on him, and they just kept doing that Jalen Williams screen, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard switch. Jalen Williams kind of making sure Nembhard couldn't get back over, and then the Pacers just kind of left Nesmith on an island. I kept asking, like, why don't they send somebody else to go throw at him, just make him get rid of the ball, make Dort beat you from a three, make Caruso. I mean, they were 3 of 16 from three. They weren't shooting that well. Instead, they just kind of left Nesmith on an island, and he got himself in foul trouble, couldn't really keep up with them. And I feel like Nesmith in this series so far, really the last 2 games, he has not done a very good job defensively stopping Jalen Williams, or even when he's been on SGA stopping him. So what do you think it is that is so much different about Nembhard versus Nesmith and stopping that matchup?
Yeah, it's funny. I was very frustrated with Dagnall's out of timeout action the first time they did it. I was like, really, this is the best after timeout action we're getting, is just we're gonna switch Nesmith onto SGA, who's in general, Nesmith is a really good defender, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, this is what we're gonna do. And then it's like, by the end of the game, it was, oh, maybe they tapped into something. So whether Dagnall figured that out, whether his staff figured that out, whether SGA just said like, hey, I can't deal with Nembhard anymore, give me anybody else to go against. And I think with Nesmith, it's not even necessarily like he can't guard SGA. It especially seemed like in those stretches, I think he drew at least 2 fouls, if not, was it 2 or 3? 2, I think.
I think it was 2.
Yeah, but it's like maybe Nesmith is just a little bit more like, it seems like he can't always control his energy, right? Yeah. Like he's going a little, where Andrew is just like, me and Andrew Nembhard are friends. I'm calling it. It's Nembhard is just always solid and under control, but physical while doing it. I just wonder if the way he plays defense and kind of the pace and the energy level he plays at is better than Nesmith, who can get a little bit worked up at times and gets him just a touch out of position, where then, like, I think that's more than anything. I wonder if OKC hunts it early in game 5 and tries to just get Nesmith in foul trouble more than anything, right? And that's the other thing. Like, listen, I am known as a Benedict Mathurin guy. Like, if you ask any Pistons fans, whatever, like that draft, I was a Ben Math guy, and he's taking a lot of heat right now. He shouldn't have been in the game. Like, he was only in the game because Nesmith fouled out.
Yeah.
Clutch time, last 60 seconds, isn't necessarily prime Benedict Mathurin situation based on what he is as a player right now. Like, he wasn't put in a great situation, and it's because Dagnall finally pushed the right button. I want to touch on something real quick. I didn't come out of this game overly negative about the Pacers, to be clear. I'm only picking the Thunder in 7 because I'm being consistent with who I thought has been the best team all year, even in the offseason, all of that. I think Dagnall's pulling at straws right now. I think he has tougher rotation decisions to make in terms of who he plays, who he doesn't. Like, Cason Wallace hasn't been effective for them. I don't think Dagnall trusts the 2 big lineup, even though he went back to it to start the game. Isaiah Joe can't play. TJ McConnell just destroys him. And I love Isaiah Joe. He can't guard McConnell. So if Indiana Pacers want to take some confidence in something, I don't know that Dagnall has this series figured out yet with his rotations.
Yeah, I think the best lineup is the one they close with, and that's with Caruso in the starting 5, basically, for Isaiah Hartenstein. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go to that maybe to start game 5. I mean, they've already shown that they're not afraid to make adjustments if they feel like they need to, and that could kind of be the kill shot that gets them going, because if Indiana gets going offensively like they did in the first quarter on the road, I mean, that could give them some confidence, and you don't want to give them that. So, I mean, that wouldn't be a shocker to me if they do make that switch. But I think one thing defensively for Indiana, it was more so in game 3 we saw because of how much Pascal got switched on to SGA in those moments, but it felt like Pascal did a much better job guarding SGA than Aaron Nesmith. And I don't know what exactly that is. I think it's just Pascal's a very smart defensive player, and I think that's where Nesmith is smart at times, but he's just so physical where he can guard a Jalen Brunson type because Jalen Brunson's hunting for contact. Right? SGA is like, I want to be slithery, I want to slip through all this stuff, and I don't think Nesmith can kind of handle that type of player as well. That's where Nembhard kind of steps in, because Nembhard is so tactful with what he does, like tactical with what he does. And I just love the way that he navigates screens and the way that he can just, he can be slithery right over the top of a screen and come back and just use his body, keep his hands up, and just make it, like we call it, Nim hell for you. So I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana maybe does make that change defensively where they put Siakam on Jalen Williams and Nesmith on Caruso, or Nesmith on Chet or whatever just say, okay, their bigs haven't really been beating us. I mean, really, they haven't. Chet had like one good quarter, I feel like, in game 3, and that was 13 points, and it's kind of been MIA offensively since then. So I don't know if Indiana feels like that's the better move, or if you're asking Siakam to do too much on both ends.
That's interesting, yeah, because I was going to say, that's an interesting matchup change where then if you just switch that action, you still feel good about it, or do they just instead see if Nembhard can navigate those screens, right? Like just, defend it in a way that keeps him on SGA because he has been so good. So I think it'll be a really, really interesting aspect of game 5. And this is what gets so fun in these series, right? Is you get these little chess matches and you feel like a team figures a little something out, and then can the other team come back and counter it the next game? And so I'm excited because Nembhard has done such a good job. Like, I know SGA's numbers still look really good, but I feel like he's having to work so hard for everything he's getting. I've been really, really impressed with how he has defended through 4 games against SGA. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I think game 2 was probably the worst of anybody for the Pacers defensively. They just gave him way too much space, and I think that, Caitlin Cooper did a great job pointing that out, how much space he was getting after that initial screen up top to just go and score, and how high OKC was hitting those screens. In Indiana, their pickup points defensively were way higher from everybody out there, and now you're making, SGA become this guy that scored, 24, 28 points, and I think it was 24 in game 3, and he only had 20 points going into the fourth quarter of game 4. And he ends up having 15, but you have 35 points and 0 assists, though. I mean, that to me is a win as well, because he's not being able to get, maybe a potential assister there, but the actual results of an assist weren't there for him.
His decision making wasn't good. Like, I think Nembhard has SGA a little bit in his, now he just like did something nobody's done since 1970. I don't know. I saw the stat somewhere that 15 points in the final how many ever minutes was something that had to like, so SGA's he's the MVP of the league though, right? Yeah. Like, we always have to keep this in context. We're not talking about, I don't know, Aaron Wiggins scoring 35 and that being a good defensive effort. We're talking about the MVP of the league, one of the best offensive players in the NBA scoring wise, maybe the best scorer in the NBA. I don't know, like debate, but I have a couple things that I wonder if Indiana will try, and you probably have a better, idea of this if it's something that Carlisle would be interested in. One, we talked about putting 2 on SGA a little bit more, just because we didn't think he was making decisions great and he was struggling with that. A little bit of the Anthony Edwards idea, like put 2 on him and then see if he can make those decisions. And especially with the way the Thunder are not shooting the 3-point ball right now, and then the other thing was just going under ball screens, and we specifically talked about it with J-Dub, because it seems like right now Williams is doing a really nice job using ball screens, snaking, re-snaking, getting downhill, but the 3-point percentage from SGA, J-Dub, and Chet are all right at 30% right now. I would let Cason Wallace shoot threes until he proves he can make one, and so I wonder about those 2 things.
Yeah, good to see your son make an appearance here on the podcast.
Yeah, I wish he had a shirt on for his appearance.
No, it's all good. I love it. Shirts and skins, right? Anyway, I think it's a really good point that you bring up, especially with going under screens for Jalen Williams, right? Like, let him shoot the ball if he wants to, right? Like, he can make them. Don't get me wrong. He's hit some big shots in this series, but it's been like one big shot. It's not been 4 or 5. So to me, I'm kind of wondering, do they go under the screen on Jalen Williams, but just kind of still go over the screen on SGA? Because it seems like that pressure has been working, against SGA. But I feel like with Jalen Williams, like, this is a dude that loves to go left, and the Pacers are pretty much just allowing him to go left whenever he wants. And I think they could do a better job of kind of shading him right, making him go to his weaker hand, and see what kind of help you can get there when he does make that drive. Because every time he's driven, it's like it's a wide open lane. There's nobody within 10 feet to try to stop the basket besides the original defender trying to catch up. So the help defense on him has not been great, but I do think that they can maybe cave in a little bit more, kind of go OKC style where they pack the paint a little bit more and say, okay, beat us from 3. OKC could obviously have a much better shooting game at home. That wouldn't surprise me. But this is a team that's been very up and down. And so I think you kind of have to figure things out, because that game last night, it really felt like it was the Jalen Williams SGA show.
Yeah.
And you got 7 out of 9 for Caruso for 20 points, which was huge. And then points off turnovers as well. I think they had 25 off turnovers last night, which almost feels like their third or fourth score for them. But I think that you can kind of keep doing what you're doing with SGA. Just try to figure out that matchup there if they do go back to that screening with Jalen Williams and how they want to switch that. But I think with Jalen Williams, they got to do a much better job of slowing him down, because I wasn't convinced after the first 2 games, like, this is a number 2 for a championship level team. It didn't feel like that. But I feel like after games 3 and games 4, like, he's been really phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I think in game 4, I think the overlooked aspect of that game for the Thunder side is what he did in the first quarter. When Indiana came out like focused and locked in and were really, they built a little bit of a lead. And I put in my notes, I was like, man, if OKC can weather this storm, I think they're going to win this game. And they ended up weathering the storm, but they still had to make the fourth quarter comeback, obviously. But I think J-Dub had a huge part of weathering that storm in the first quarter in terms of his first quarter scoring. I think sometimes that can be lost, right? SGA is rightfully getting a lot of love for how he closed out the game. I've given Caruso and Chet a lot of love for their play throughout the fourth quarter, especially defensively. But Chet even had 2 big-time offensive rebound putbacks in the fourth quarter run. Caruso had a ridiculous mid-range jumper after Indiana just destroyed an OKC after timeout. And that's another thing that they've done a great job. Like, their pressure has just destroyed Thunder after timeout actions. But I thought what J-Dub did in the first quarter to not let that be a 15-point game or 20, like, I seriously thought Indiana was playing out away in the first quarter. Like, they might extend this thing into double digits. And I thought J-Dub did a really nice job being aggressive offensively and keeping that from happening and just keeping OKC within striking distance the entire game until, eventually in the fourth, whenever they made the full comeback.
Yeah, and I will say this. I know Carlisle's not going to change his rotation too much, but man, Siakam was like a plus 14 in the first half, and it felt like every time he was off the floor, they were just getting him. Abused, you can't play him all 48 minutes. I get that. He's going to get gas, especially how hard he plays on both ends. But I feel like maybe they could keep him in longer in the first quarter to kind of build that lead before they just pull him out when it's 20-12, because that's when OKC went on their run and kind of made this a game again as soon as he came out. But the guy that I feel like has not really held up his end of the bargain for the Pacers is Myles Turner.
I was just about to bring it up.
4 of 20 from 3 this series.
Yeah.
The only game he shot 40% was game 1, and he was a +8. Every other game, he's been a negative. He's a -10 in the series overall. Can't hit any open shots. Everything looks short. Not really providing much. What can Indiana do to get him going?
So I was just about to ask it, because I think the most fascinating thing, we've talked some of the X's and O's, the schematics of what we think these teams could do and try. Oh, the other thing, OKC trying to put 2 on Tyrese Halliburton was not a good decision. Like, when we talk about coaching, I was like, what are you doing? Like, this is the last thing I'm going to do with Tyrese Halliburton, because we know he can pass. Like, we know he wants to do that. So I thought that was a really interesting decision to start the game from Dak, especially 2 big lineup. And then you decide to put 2 on the ball where you have 1 less like perimeter guy to rotate and scramble. Anyway, I think what I'm fascinated to see, and you mentioned it, like playing, when do we see that from one of these 2 teams? When do these teams go, hey, this is must win? Your time on the bench is going down to, you're going to play 40 plus minutes tonight, because this is the NBA Finals, game 5, game 6, game 7. And as I was working through that in my head, kind of thinking about different guys, like who would be out of the rotation, who would stay in the rotation for both teams. Listen, I love Myles Turner. I think he's awesome. And I thought the first 2 series of the playoffs, I thought he was really good. I thought the Knicks series wasn't quite as good for him. I don't know if you agree or not.
Very mediocre series.
Yeah, especially defensively. I thought there were some real struggles there. And then I will be honest, Alex, I'm expecting the Myles Turner played with blank injury throughout the latter portion of the playoffs once these finals are over.
Yeah.
If we don't get that, I'm going to have what was going on, because he just doesn't look like he's moving as well as what I expect him to. And then the jumper's just not there. And that is part of the archetype, right? Like when you're talking about Myles Turner, and because we know he's going to get destroyed on the boards, right? And defensively, if he's not moving as well, he can get attacked a little bit there. And then the big pitch then is, well, at least he's spacing the floor and knocking down threes, whether trail threes, pick and pop, whatever. And it just hasn't happened consistently. And when that's like really kind of the superpower, the elite skill, and that escapes you, you turn into not a super plus player for your team.
Yeah, I mean, I know he was dealing with a sickness after game 3. Carlisle brought that up and said that upper respiratory thing, and I talked to his guy Lavelle, who is kind of his manager of stuff, and we were talking, and he said he's got to get him some medicine before game 4, and he's just not feeling great. Breathing is really hard, obviously playing this pace as well, and so I understand all that, I do, but it's like you said, it's NBA Finals, you got to push through that. And a cold shouldn't impact your shot. I'm just going to be honest with you. I played sick myself in pickup ball, and I actually feel better sometimes after I run because you kind of run that sickness out of you a little bit by sweating it out and things like that. But I wonder, and this might just be a stupid take, but I kind of wonder, is he just fatigued because of how hard played this series is? And they've already played for, almost 3 months now in playoff basketball at such a high intensity. Like, is it just a lot of wear and tear on his legs?
That's a really interesting point. I don't mean to make a Pistons analogy here, but it was something that has been talked about with Cade Cunningham coming out of the Detroit, finally making the playoffs, and him just like learning how to, realizing, I guess, more than anything, what kind of shape you have to be in to complete a full season and then go into the playoffs and play the necessary minutes at that level, that energy and all of that, and how now he can go into the offseason and train his body. Indiana has made deep playoff runs, but now we're back-to-back deep playoff runs, and we're into the NBA Finals and all of that with Turner, and the backup center position has been a little bit of it. Like, I would be interested. I wonder what his minutes played this season in the regular season were to last season. Maybe that wouldn't be a factor, but I wonder. And because of that backup center situation, what's the answer? Like, is it more Obi? Are we going more Obi? I know he had a great, that's another thing that gets lost in this loss is he had a tremendous game, and they obviously didn't end up winning, so it won't be talked about as much. But I don't know what their answer is. If it's less Turner minutes, I don't know. So I'm looking at his minutes here in he played more regular season minutes this year, but only by 100, but in 5 less games. So nothing crazy there. But this is back-to-back seasons, of 550 minutes played last year in the playoffs, and he's already up to 600 this year. Maybe there is a little bit of wear and tear on the body. Yeah,
I kind of wonder because he does look a little sluggish at times, running up and down the court. I understand it's a very physical game here, especially against OKC, and he really struggled guarding Towns in the previous series. Yeah. And I think the Pacers did a good job of trying to get him off that matchup and letting Siakam guard Towns at times more often than him. But like you said, their backup center position's been pretty bad. They couldn't play Thomas Bryant in game 3. He was so bad. Carlisle pulled him out within 30 seconds of being in the game. And then Obi Toppin has been unbelievable offensively, and he's done some good things defensively at times, but he was not very good defensively in that fourth quarter. And I actually told somebody, I said, I think it was the second quarter, Halliburton was matched up with SGA, and Jalen Williams had Obi Toppin on him. The Thunder decided we'd rather attack Obi than attack Tyrese, out on the perimeter. So yeah, it is kind of like the Pacers are, this is a series where if they had a healthy Isaiah Jackson, I think that it really would have made a difference just because Isaiah is so good defensively at, shuffling his feet and switching on to smaller guys, and he's got that great jump where he can block shots and get rebounds. Like, it would have been a nice addition to just have somebody like that to throw out there because they really don't have that. So we'll have to see. But I kept saying, before game 3, people are asking me, who do you think the X factor is? I'm like, if Myles can see 3 or 4 threes go down from the top of the key, like we've seen him do in so many other playoff series, that's going to get him going. That's going to get the crowd into it. I think that's going to be huge for him. And I think he usually plays better defensively when he does that. But yeah, overall, they got to find a way to get him going a little bit more. And maybe it's not even just shooting threes. Maybe it's, hey, let's do some pick and pop around the 20-foot mark or the 18-foot mark instead, where it's not 23 feet, 24 feet, because the stupid step back that he hit in game 3, I don't know if you saw that off the dribble, that little step back fadeaway that he hit that was 19 feet. I'm like, how do you hit that but not a 3 when you're wide open? Obviously something's just going on and mentally with him, and I think he does kind of have a mental aspect of his game where he allows missed shots to kind of carry on with him. But overall, they got to get him going. So last thing for me, I know I need to let you go here. What do you think the Pacers need to do in game 5 if they want to come out with a victory and have a chance to close it out in game 6?
Yeah, I mean, it's not great analysis, but continue to be who you are, right? We've had these conversations. I think their pace, their relentlessness, their ability to respond is what makes them great. And they are a great team. Even if they lose this in 6, people will be like, oh, you know what? Like, no, this is a great basketball team in 2024-25. That's a team I enjoy watching play. So continue to don't lose your identity because you lost one clutch game, right? I mean, you have been one of the best clutch teams in the playoffs, maybe the best clutch team in the playoffs with clutch players galore and clutch shots. So don't lose your identity or, let your confidence waver because of that. I would like to see maybe some of these defensive adjustments we've talked about specifically on Dub. I think you brought it up. SGA is the MVP of the league for a reason. If he goes and gets 30, that's not necessarily what beats you. He's consistently getting 30. Like, that's what's special about him. Don't let him go get 45.
Yeah.
Can you keep Dub under 20 and not let, Caruso get 20 or any other role player or whatever? So I think that would be the most important adjustment, is how are you going to keep Jalen Williams from being super effective? And then I always point to Tyrese Halliburton. And I love Tyrese Halliburton's game. I think he's awesome. When Tyrese is playing with the right aggressive mentality, I think that's what ultimately gives the Pacers a chance of winning an NBA championship. So as long as he has that for the next 2 or 3 games, whatever it takes, I think they're going to have a great chance. And like I said, Alex, I'm picking Thunder in 7 because that's who I've rocked with all year going back to the offseason. But if you told me Pacers in 6, Pacers in 7, I'm not going to counter that or argue with you at all, but those would be the keys to it for me.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating. I mean, Indiana's never trailed in a playoff series. I don't think OKC's trailed in a playoff series, obviously, but Indiana's never trailed in a playoff series. OKC's never lost back-to-back games. Indiana's never lost back-to-back games in the playoffs. So these teams are 2 evenly matched teams, and it'll be interesting to see how they counter it. I thought Tyrese Halliburton post-game did not seem too upset about the loss. Like, we've seen them kind of look, heads down, deflated. Like, I thought that they might feel that way after this game, but him and Pascal kind of just said, now we got to get better, got to watch the film so we can do, obviously this one hurts, but we let this one go. We got to figure it out. And Halliburton said he's excited to win one in OKC. So I just thought, okay, we saw Halliburton smiling when he walked off the court after game 5 against the Knicks, like this little smirk on his face. And I'm thinking, why is this dude smiling? If you lose game 6, this is going to be really scary. But I just think he has the utmost confidence in himself and his team and the way they've been playing this year. Nothing's impossible. So we'll see what happens. But Bryce, I do appreciate your time and your analysis. A really good conversation. You mentioned at the top where everybody can find you at. So anything else you want to plug before we sign off here?
Nah, just follow me over there, Motor City Hoops, on Twitter, on Blue Sky. I got the Substack, so if Pacers fans get to the point where I have some NBA draft video breakdowns, not necessarily players in the Pacers range, but maybe if you're just interested in that. Also some free agent stuff if you guys want to look at that. 8 to 10 minute video breakdowns over there. It's all free. It'll always be free. Like, you don't even have to subscribe. Just go over to the motorcityhoops.substack.com. The Pistons Pulse, I can't imagine anybody wants to listen to that. But if you want some Pistons content for whatever reason, but the Game Theory podcast, we'll have an off-season preview when the time comes for the Pacers over there. We're going live nightly after the games. We're doing NBA draft stuff. We have a mock draft coming out on Sunday into Monday, and then we'll be live for the draft. So I know there's all sorts of options out there, but if you want to double up or whatever, you can always join us over there for the NBA Draft Live.
Great stuff, Bryce, and thanks again for coming on. Pacer Nation, we'll be back tomorrow with another episode, so hope you guys enjoy the content we're putting out, and hopefully the Pacers can figure things out for Game 5. But with that being said, we'll talk to y'all later, and let's go Pacers.